How can a tyrant rule the free and the proud, but for a tyranny in their own freedom and a shame in their own pride? Around the world, friends, we are seeing so much of inequality, injustice, and it's becoming more and more. Some of my closest friends are Persians, and to see what's going on in Iran, the misogyny and the control and trying to tell people how they should dress. A lot of my friends in Russia are sick and tired of what their own political establishment is doing, and my friends in Ukraine are suffering. Everyone's suffering. Earlier this year, I happened to travel to Jerusalem and to see that part of the world in strife, here in India, all over the world. I studied to be a journalist, and while I was studying, I came to the conclusion that as much as things change, they remain the same. And growing up reading the panorama of Deccan Herald and Economist, I had this notion that sometime the civil strife in Africa will come to an end, the Middle East crisis will ease out, and we are moving towards more happier times. But it doesn't seem to be the case. Of course, war is reducing. But for the last 3-4 years, we kept saying that war is unprofitable, and yet we're in the midst of a war in Europe. This is really fascinating because it begs the question that what really at the core sense of a human being, if there is no love, and then you've got this hatred and dividing people and trying to conquer and have power over people, it comes down to this control and power. Misogyny is across the world in every part. A lot of my Scandinavian friends were telling me how it's much more equal, the rights are much more equal, and I believe that. And yet we find that the political fallout of the Prime Minister parting, and it may not have been so much so if it was a man, right? So I really don't know in which part of the world are people really free. There are levels of freedom, and I hope that everybody has a certain level of freedom in this day and age, the 21st century, to tell people how they should be dressed, to tell people how they should be thinking, and to try and tell people what they should eat, and so on and so forth is sad. Yeah, to put a mild word, it's sad. There's so many beautiful things to do in the world, and it's 50 years since we sent somebody to the moon. That is representative of what can be accomplished by the human imagination, as opposed to what can be conjured by the desire to dominate people and to control the narrative. And this is all over the case. I live in India, and we come from a culture that was all inclusive for a very, very long time, and now we find that the narrative is being controlled. This, when I'm sharing this, it may not make a difference to anything at all, but it's very important for me because to be able to express myself allows me to go through the day in a healthy manner. And this is what I would like to share with all my friends. A lot of you are people doing meditation and yoga and conscious living and spirituality and stuff. And it's sometimes when I close my eyes, when I'm in silence, the world drops away. It doesn't matter. I'm in bliss. But then when I open my eyes and I see people really suffering, there is no reason for an 18-year-old to die because of somebody's political agenda of control. There is no justification for that, and I can say it's karma and XYZ and so on and so forth. There is really no justification for somebody having to go through so much suffering. Now, while I spend most of my time peaceful by myself, without the empathy to be able to feel somebody suffering, it takes me a long time personally to feel suffering of others. That's just the way I am. For a lot of you, it's much, much more beautiful, and you're much more emotional to that aspect, which is great. And the reason it's important for us to express it, and a lot of us have 10, 20,000 followers. And it's nice to sort of express this and to share this because it may not change, but it is important that we're able to articulate. So what is the real use of me doing all the yoga I do and being in bliss and not being able to address the world that I also live in? To not have the energy and the voice to share at times like this, that this is not acceptable, that I cannot just do another yoga nidra and chill out. And it does affect the fact that if my mother, sister, wife, friend, daughter cannot be free, how can I be free? If my friends in parts of the world are suffering racism and inequality, how can I really be happy and free? If economic issues mean that somebody has got enough and more to splurge and somebody cannot even have a meal a day, how can I truly be happy? Now, all of us feel the same. It's not about being holier than thou. Everybody feels like this. It's a question of how much we accept it or how much we are willing to sort of do something for it. And that something could even be spending 10 minutes in silence with a heart full of love, respect, and gratitude for people around the world, and a sense of hope that people and ourselves don't have to suffer this sort of tyranny. How can a tyrant rule over the free and proud, but for a tyranny in their own freedom and a shame in their own pride? Gibran's words on freedom are especially relevant today.